Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for joining today's Developers Insight session, How Wearables Transform the Enterprise. My name is Maurice White. I'm a Senior Solutions Consultant within our Mobile Business-to-Business organization on our Solutions and Alliances team. Essentially, that means I have the privilege of working alongside of partners and enterprises as they look to build out solutions that tie into the powerful components of the Samsung ecosystem. I'll let our special guest, introduce himself.
Thanks, Mo. Hi, I'm Jeremy Balkin. I lead innovation for HSBC. That includes the partnerships with fintech and technology companies and developing the execution and I'm going to start that again.
Go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Balkin. I'm head of innovation for HSBC, and that includes leading the partnership and fintech relationships for the bank here in the U.S., in addition to the execution of our exponential growth strategy, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Jeremy. So today's session is How Wearable Transform the Enterprise. Essentially, what we want to do is talk a little bit about wearables, of course, talk about the Samsung ecosystem. But what we really want you to walk away with is that the understanding that these wearables are more than just a wearable. They're more than a consumer-oriented device, although they do some very cool things when you pair them up with your smartphone. These devices can act as enterprise tools once introduced into your enterprise environment. So what we want to do is kind of share some information to help you understand that. Jeremy will be sharing some details about how he was able to lead kind of the innovation of the Samsung Wearables in the flagship branch in Manhattan in New York, and how they were able to provide some new levels of collaboration and communication with their employees and their customers at that location. So definitely looking forward to hearing more about that solution. So I'll briskly get through my content so that we can make sure that Jeremy has all the time that he needs. First things first. Think about these wearables, right? How wearables transform the enterprise. Wearables have grown in popularity in the consumer space in so many different ways. A few benefits that they provide is that they're seamless, right? Seamless even from the perspective of out of the box. As soon as you literally take these wearables out of the box and connect them up to your smartphone, that's a seamless process in and of itself. And once you do that pairing, then these devices begin to take over and start to do some really cool things. It becomes almost an extension of your smartphone. It increases kind of displays and communications. From the display perspective, literally, if you receive a phone call on your smartphone, you'll see it displayed on your watch. You can take a call there, you can respond to text messages. You have all of that from the consumer perspective. But that also applies in the enterprise space as well. If you have enterprise applications that reside on your smartphones, you can integrate those applications with an application residing on the smartwatch and increase kind of that collaboration and that seamlessness even in enterprise use cases. We'll hear more about that from the HSBC perspective. They're also secure and sensor rich. From the security perspective, any application that touches enterprise data, you truly need to be thinking about security. These wearables are built leveraging the Samsung Knox platform, approved by 29 governments, literally hardware-based security. So it's not just a software layer component that's been added on top of a hardware that's already been baked and shipped out. This is literally embedded into the hardware at the factory. Sensor-rich. They have all kinds of sensors on there, right? You have GPS, you have heart rate monitors, motion, you have activity. You even have sensors that tell you if you're wearing the watch. You can take a combination of the data from all those different sensors and create a profile about who that user is. Maybe create some type of trust score or something along those lines to help you understand everything about that user and use that for authentication and things like that in the enterprise space. Or you can just pull data from those sensors individually and use it for maybe health-oriented activities. They're also self-sufficient. Going back even to that out-of-boxing experience, you don't necessarily have to pair these wearables with your smartphone in order to begin to use them. You can just leave them disconnected and they'll become self-sufficient. But on the enterprise perspective, we provide tools that you can use to help to create a self-sufficient, independent endpoint into your enterprise environment. Using tools such as our Wearable EMM, as well as Knox Configure, you're able to do things such as push profiles down to these devices, doing things such as setting up kiosk mode, remapping hardware buttons, whitelisting and blacklisting applications. So you have quite a bit available to you, not only from the consumer perspective, but these wearables have been built with the enterprise in mind. One other thing to consider is, and this is what we really kind of want you to walk away with, is that wearables work for the enterprise. These are wearable communications and collaboration tools. You can do so much with them. You can build out solutions that tie into your back end, as mentioned before. So you can build things such as workflows. We're seeing implementations of wearables in smart factory environments. We're seeing them in machine-to-machine communication. There's quite a bit of activity that we're starting to see in the enterprise space as it relates to communications and collaborations. Especially from the communication and collaboration perspective, you're able to build out solutions that allow you to quickly communicate to your fellow employees. We saw specifically in a manufacturing environment where they were using walkie-talkies prior to the introductions of wearables. And this was a scenario where if they were building and manufacturing parts for automobiles, and if they ran out of supplies on a specific line, what they would do is grab a walkie-talkie and start yelling, "Hey, I'm out of parts. I need some widgets on line number 14. And oftentimes, the lines would stay down for 20, 30, 45 minutes, which would literally cost this manufacturing plant money. We introduced wearables into this manufacturing environment, and they were able to quickly implement a task management and assignment system, and then increase that communication and collaboration and efficiency. And it really helped to drive forward innovation within that environment. So we saw an operational efficiency increase. That's exactly what Samsung Wearables can do in the enterprise. And as mentioned, there's quite a few sensors on these wearables, a lot of health-oriented sensors. So what we're seeing, and you can also do this as well, is you're able to pull independent data or leverage the Samsung Health platform to pull health-oriented data and gamify and reward worker health activity. We're starting to see many companies introduce wearables to their employees to help to save on insurance costs. So this is definitely another aspect of wearables in the enterprise. And finally, they're NOx enabled. NOx is more than just our security component, right? Although that's super valuable and leveraged, as mentioned, and supported by 29 governments globally, but it also gives you the ability to perform that configuration that I was sharing a bit earlier. You can use the tools to set up the kiosk mode and remap hardware buttons. You can do that in a variety of ways, though. You can leverage our NOx configure, as was mentioned in the prior slide, but you can also do that at the developer level. This is a developer conference, so there's also a software development kit that allows you to customize and build applications to truly tie into the power and the capabilities of this device. One thing I kind of wanted to cover with this slide is there's a paradigm shift. What we're calling out here is by the end of 2019, there's projected to be 137 million smart wearable devices that have been sold worldwide. What this is saying, a few things here. From the consumer side, there's a high level of adoption. People are wearing smartwatches all over the place. We see them, people have grown accustomed to using them. What that means from the enterprise side is that the barrier of entry has now been lowered. You can now introduce wearables into your environment with a little bit less friction from the user population. A few years back, not only might you have been introducing a new process, but you also was introducing a new form factor. Now you're not introducing a new form factor. People are comfortable. They understand wearables. They get the concept now. So now you can just focus on building out a solution that helps to increase the collaboration and their engagement even with these wearable devices even more. You can streamline business processes, think workflows and approvals. There's some things to keep in mind when designing solutions for wearables that you should work with us on. We can definitely kind of help you kind of design some solutions around that. You can improve time to complete specific tasks. I can leave my phone on my desk, go into a conference room, and still stay in communication. You can track users for efficiency, safety, and security. We're seeing the introduction of wearables in internal environments where Bluetooth beacons are being used to help for wayfinding and helping people navigate through environments. We're also seeing wearables used for training, et cetera. Pretty much the last point here, engaging employees through new ways of collaboration and training, as just mentioned. So again, people are looking for new ways to do their work. If you just gave everybody a typewriter, they'd look at you like you were crazy. But if you help to not only move your business forward, but move how you collaborate and how your workers can get their jobs done, if you help to move that process forward, it'll put you in a position where you have a happier and more engaged workforce. This is yet another example about the paradigm shift. From the machine-to-machine perspective, we're seeing, I mentioned a little bit earlier, the smart factory concept. There's a lot of scenarios where there's all these disparate pieces of hardware talking to each other. I mean, we see it in the Samsung environment. We can project images from our phone onto Samsung TVs using Smart View. That's essentially what this is referring to from the machine perspective. But from the wearables, we're seeing introduction in different enterprise environments that show that the possibilities are endless. We're seeing it in health and fitness. We're seeing it in manufacturing, as I just mentioned. Robotics, we also see it in the financial space, and Jeremy will talk a little bit about that as well. Jeremy, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Mo. So I'm not sure how many people here today would naturally think of a bank talking about wearables at the Samsung Developers Conference. So thank you for your patience and your open-mindedness to embrace this historic innovation that we've launched, being the world's first bank and major bank to deploy wearable tech in our bank branches in partnership with our friends at Samsung. And you know, we have a customer obsession, but there are two types of customers. There's our external customer, those who come to our branches or on our mobile channels every single day and pay us money for a service. And thank you to those in this room who are. But we also have an internal customer, our employees, our people, our most valuable assets. And one of the things I spend a lot of my time doing is thinking about what the future of work is going to look like. And obviously there's a lot of interest for thinking about tools, technologies, deployments that are customer facing. I'm not sure that same level of attention is thinking what tools can make our employees' lives more productive, more efficient, increase their day-to-day utility in their day jobs. And so, of course, and in financial services, I think there's a view in the marketplace has lagged behind other industries in terms of innovation, digitization, technology adoption, et cetera. So one of the things we really wanted to solve for is, you know, in the 21st century, especially in corporate America, traditional communications tended to be, you know, a phone was tethered to a desk and locked to a desk, and a screen was locked to a wall for a computer. And that's fine in a kind of a 20th century world, but in a 21st century world where customers want to bank when, where, and how they choose, in our flagship branch in Manhattan, I encourage you all to come and visit us, by the way, corner of 40th and 5th. It's a great experience. You know, it was built 60 years ago. It's on 3 floors. It's 25,000 square feet. Customers are everywhere. They don't want to just go to one of our advisors' desks to be served. They want to be served where, when, and how they choose. So recognizing the limitations of traditional communications, that you know, we were thinking, well, what technologies could we use to solve for some of those challenges? And wearables, and you raised this earlier, Mo, 139 million devices sold. Wearables are becoming more ubiquitous in all of our lives. Why couldn't we deploy wearable technology to try to solve that communication efficiency challenge, to give our people more productive tools to do their jobs more efficiently? Because the wearable is connected to the person, essentially. The smartwatch is attached to the wrist. And so, you know, we thought long and hard about the thesis behind that. We did a lot of design thinking workshops with our frontline staff at our flagship branch in Manhattan to understand what are the problems they wanted to solve for. And so when we worked with Samsung with the wearables use case and deployment, and remember, no one had ever done this before. So there was no body of evidence, there was no historical case study, there was no learning the lessons and mistakes of some competitor or whatever. We had to we were the guinea pigs in some ways, which actually was great. And that's why we designed it with really 4 key objectives in mind. The first is we wanted to optimize communication just amongst our frontline staff. It's much more efficient to tap a preset message on the Galaxy device for the branch manager to all of his team, or for advisor to advisor, with a preset message with a turn of a bezel that says, you know, your appointment is here. I'm running late. I'll be there soon. Simple messages with normal communications that they would say to each other. Preset, fast, efficient, solve something within a fraction of a second, as compared to unlocking that corporate device with the 17 different passwords that you can't remember, or you can't remember that colleague of yours' extension on their phone line to call them. So we wanted to optimize communication amongst our people. And if we could do that, could we make them more productive? Spending less time doing administrative tasks, just communicate one another, and more time serving customers. And hopefully serving more customers, and maybe more customers in less time with that productivity. The third is, clearly, if they can serve more customers in less time, could they therefore reduce the customer waiting time? And certainly improve the waiting experience. And then finally, we embedded, with the support of Samsung, and this actually was one of the key pieces of feedback from our team and through the design thinking sessions, was a proprietary security feature. Banking is still a dangerous business. How could we deploy the wearable to give our frontline staff more peace of mind and security, when it gets dark in the winter, when they're locking up the vault at night, doing the security procedures, and reluctant to necessarily share what that feature is. Suffice it to say, it was very important. One of the other things that was really interesting is not only could our people send preset messages to one another, there was essentially a micro SIM with advanced LTE capabilities. So effectively, the watch was also a phone. So when some press came to see this historic demo, initially pilot for themselves, they interviewed our branch manager, and he said, they said, how do you feel about this? He said, I feel like 007. I feel like James Bond. This is sexy. I mean, where do you hear a branch manager at any bank in the world saying such amazing positive feedback about the tools that their team has? And so one of the first things the team did was they went down to the bank vault, which is down below a lot of concrete. Remember, this facility was built 60 years ago, where traditional cell phones reception was sketchy at best. First thing one of the guys did, made a phone call from his watch upstairs, perfect reception.
Nice. Advanced
LTE. So then you think about trust in technology. All of a sudden, our people are like, wow, this technology is not only amazing and it's cool and it's going to make us more efficient, this is keeping us safer. What else can we do with that innovation team? What other deployments can we have? So those were the kind of the 4 key objectives. We initially started with a pilot at our flagship branch in Manhattan, 40th and 5th. We soon then went to another branch in Manhattan, a different architecture and landscape to test the functionality with a different floor plan. And actually, we had some tremendous results there. We then, my colleagues in Dubai, in the Middle East, are deploying it in one of the branches out there. We recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, I was at a big HSBC leadership gathering in Malaysia, and we showcased the solution to our colleagues around the world because there was so much buzz and excitement about what the innovation team in America was doing with wearables. We've seen during the trial period, the 6-month pilot period in our flagship branch, compared to the 2 prior years, so we had a pretty good sample set over 3 years to compare it to, we saw a 45% increase in new account openings over that 6-month period compared to the 2 prior years. Wow. Staggering results. Staggering results. And I think it confirmed the thesis around those 4 key objectives. We did see optimization in person-to-person communication. We did see evidence of reduced waiting times. But clearly, we saw more productivity because our people were able to open more accounts and serve more customers with more high-value-added needs in less time. And if you think about it, if you just paint the picture, a customer walks in off 5th Avenue, and I'm Australian. I'm an immigrant to this great country, but even I know that in New York, people are a little bit short on time, especially coming to a bank branch during their finite lunch break of any given day. And the best practice industry waiting time for a consumer bank in the US is 4 minutes. 4 minutes in Manhattan is 4 years. Nobody waits 4 years. I mean, that's insane. So if you set the scene, a customer walks in, they walk into our beautiful greeting desk with our highly trained staff. The old model was, hey, I'm here to see, my advisor, unlock the computer, quickly get the passwords, send an email to said advisor who happens to be sitting upstairs or downstairs. By the time they unlock their computer to even know there was an email because they're in another meeting, all of a sudden, you can see a really unpleasant experience that could take more than 4 minutes just to even manage that expectation of the customer to say, hey, your advisor's even coming to see you on time. Wearables, within a fraction of a second, you could send it, tilt the bezel, send a preset message, hey, your customer is here. Importantly, there was no customer data or PII in the use case. So it would never say the customer's name, for example. It would just say your appointment is here. And then if you're an advisor with a customer, for example, you could simply, with a twist of the bezel, send a preset message back, say, I'll be 2 minutes, or I'm on my way. Within literally a fraction of a second, then the person greeting the customer could manage that expectation and say, Maurice is on his way. Would you like to take a seat and get a coffee? An amazing customer experience, totally obliterating the unpleasantness that many customers in consumer banking face. And then in addition to that, one of the other things that was fascinating is, yes, we live in this hyper-digital world, and clearly the last decade or so with the smartphone has had tremendous advantages to our lives. But the smartphone can also be a barrier between people. So if our frontline staff were wanting to be a bit more efficient to take out their device, in the old days, to call or to text a colleague to say, well, you pull out the phone and the customer's thinking, why is this person taking out their device? This is antisocial. Whereas with the wearables, they're constantly sort of almost keeping eye contact with the customer because it's a new technology they've never seen before. It's a conversation starter as well. We found that alone. A lot of customers were asking, like, what is that? That's really cool. That's really interesting. So it was a great excuse to have a conversation and then talk about other things. We've seen tremendous results. And that's why we've decided to extend beyond the pilot and roll it out into a number of our branches across the country, which we'll be doing over the next 12 months.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Awesome. Well, what's super interesting to me out of all the industries that you would expect to be at Samsung Developer Conference talking about introducing wearables into their environment, banking and financial services will probably be one of the last ones you expect to see here. What does that say to you about the state of innovation in financial services?
I don't know what it says about the state of me, but I think it tells a really good story that actually the only way is up for financial services, and I think customers in financial services are crying out for innovation. They're crying out for better technologies. So are our people, the internal customer. I think it goes without saying that innovation is going to separate the winners and the losers in corporate America, no less in financial services. And if you look at, for example, I talked about the future of work earlier. If you look at employee engagement scores in almost every industry, and I see some nodding faces, you probably know where I'm going with this, employee morale, employee engagement, is an issue that corporate America is facing. So why can't we give our people the tools that they use in their private lives to help make them more productive, more efficient, higher utility, better for recruitment and engagement, make them safer, to the example I used earlier, in their day jobs?
Sure. And
we think that's really important. We think financial services, I think it's sad in a way that here we are as a financial institution, we're making history doing the first deployment. What's the excuse for every other industry? And we hope that, as an industry, we rise together and embrace technology, partnerships, innovation, because at the end of the day, we all share the same customer. And customers are more intelligent and more educated and more aware today than they've ever been in history. They know what they don't know, in many cases. So we should use the tools to give our people, and therefore the better customer experience, everything we can to deliver a more efficient, productive, safe, and efficient environment.
Okay. You mentioned that you guys have 2 customers earlier, right? You mentioned the people that actually are coming to your branch to do banking activities, but you talked about your employees.
Yep.
Can you talk about the importance of including them in the process? You mentioned you had design thinking workshops and things like that. I'm sure that helped from the perspective of barrier of entry and engagement overall. Yeah,
it's a great point. So my CEO always says, a happy employee means a happy customer. So we think about the employee experience, and therefore that hopefully translates to a positive customer experience. And the issue of trust as well is really important, especially in the workplace. And so to the example I mentioned earlier about the security feature, and one of the first things one of the team did as a sort of a gag was to see if the phone worked on the device from the vault. Well, what do you think that does to their level of trust in management, in the innovation team, in the next innovation deployment, when this, they probably didn't think it was going to work, and it worked better than their own cell phones.
Right.
And so that trust in leadership really is tremendously important. In fact, it's probably more important in 2019 than it's ever been before. So I think, when you think about the employee in mind, trust means doing what you say you're going to do. keeping your word, backing your words with actions. And so with the design thinking, for example, we didn't just say, hey, let's make history, put wearables in a bang brand. No one's ever done that before, and just set and forget, put it in, and see it fail. We went to the team, our flagship branch team I'm very close to, spent a lot of time with them over a number of years. And I worked with them to say, well, what are some of your challenges? Well, clearly communication was one. Another one was productivity. Security, of course. And so then we thought, after putting up different solutions to some of their problems, I thought, well, what about wearables? And some of our staff actually had wearables. They were accustomed to wearables in their own life. So when I made the case, well, what about if we could customize something that's enterprise grade for the ecosystem of the team? Is that something you'd be interested in? And of course they were interested in it, but then it was more than just the device itself. Is what does the device do? Mm-hmm. And so then we had a number of working sessions, with the Samsung team around, what type of messages they should be that would help that the staff wanted. And then, one of the amazing things, you talk about trust, which is really important, and faith in leadership. When we deployed it after numerous ideation sessions, our branch manager was like, hey, can we change one of the commands to say this instead? Call up Samsung. An hour later, via the cloud, it's updated. They couldn't believe this, our team. Like, within literally an hour, they had a change that was customized and deployed, which is unheard of for corporate America. And then again, you think about trust. You think about the faith that team therefore has, not only in their feedback being listened to and acted on, but willingness to be open for the next deployment, or the next innovation, or the next idea. And I think that's priceless, because it comes back to employee retention, it comes back to employee engagement, it comes back to motivation, it comes back to a reason for being as employees, as people, productivity benefits. Some of these results have blown us away. And we've been so proud to do this with Samsung. We're very grateful for the partnership so far, and candidly, the road ahead is even more exciting for both of us.
Absolutely, and I think the applause we hear next door is actually appropriate for this point.
No, it's for the Samsung team. They're fantastic.
Well, I have to say that the sentiment is shared on the Samsung side. The HSBC Samsung partnership is definitely something that we take great pride in, and excited that you guys decided to go down that path from the wearables perspective. I do have a couple of more questions for you, if you don't mind. So why did you guys choose Samsung, right? I mean, we're not the only maker of smart wearables, but what was the decision process? How did you guys land with Samsung from the partnership perspective?
I think in many ways Samsung chose us. And what I mean by that is, the theme of wearables, there are many different options and types of wearables as well. And so what we wanted to do was we didn't want to kind of get some retrofitted solution that you can go to your local tech store, buy it off the shelf. And we wanted something that was enterprise grade, that was customized for our needs, which was really, really important, that had the level of security and functionality that could meet the needs, the robustness, the rigor of what a financial services firm that's highly regulated needs. So that all of a sudden narrows your field down to a very small, less than a handful of potential players. And candidly, the reason I say Samsung chose us is, the Samsung teams, and I say teams, pushed our thinking even further. The level of customization blew us away in terms of what was possible, and met those important other factors I mentioned about being enterprise grade, customized for the workforce. And so, we never really felt that it was like two teams, two companies. There was a point where the Samsung crew was spending so much time with our crew, it just felt like one big family. And shout out to Gary, if he's here, who's been tremendous since day one, and all the extended folks at Samsung. But more importantly, I think, is it's one thing doing some form of deployment. It's another thing the monitoring. It's another thing the engagement. It's another thing the follow-up. It's another thing that the checking back in to see how it's going. They did a really good survey after the trial to get engagement and get feedback, because it was just as much interesting to the Samsung people as it was to ours to see the research and the feedback. And like I say, then the ability to customize live and in real time and then update was amazing.
Awesome. So another question for you. Message to the developer community. We're at a developer conference, right? And you guys are definitely helping to drive innovation in the financial services space, but I think that's also going to cross verticals. But for any developers in the room or that'll be checking this video out a bit later, what messaging would you want to convey to those guys?
You know, I think it's more than a message. It's really a call to action. It's really a plea. You know, I think there are, 5,000 people here at this conference, probably all thinking about every other industry than financial services. Please think about financial services. Because look at the success we've had to start with. Maybe we come back next year and we're being inundated with 12 different other ideas that can move it forward for us. Please think about financial services. You know, the industry has never been more open for partnership, for collaboration, for innovation than it is today. It's needed desperately. Customers expect it. It's time that big financial institutions continue to partner with companies like Samsung and others. But please, if you're a developer out there, doesn't matter if you're a kid anywhere in the world who's thinking about deployment, think about wearables, because clearly wearables ain't going away. And in fact, wearables have a huge demand beyond which we've ever seen for corporate America, and use cases that we haven't even touched upon that I'd love to explore. But please think about financial services.
A couple of other questions regarding your solution. So is the device configured kind of in a purpose-built scenario, like it only runs your HSBC application, or does it do more than that as well? So
the device works within the ecosystem of the branch. So effectively, it's a closed architecture only within the flagship branch. So you can only make the call to someone within the ecosystem in the team. You can only send a message to someone within the team. And that was really important. And not only that, could you send a message to an individual. The branch manager, for example, could send a message to everybody and find out where everybody is, or send a message of importance to the entire team at once, which transformed, for example, his employee experience. You know, he's a very energetic person. He's always running around. When we deployed the wearables, we could see him more often because he didn't need to be running around all the time. Because the communication, the technology with Samsung made him more efficient and more productive with the way he could manage his day-to-day and his time. Because at the end of the day, time is the most important resource we have. You can sell it, you can't buy it. It's in our lives. It's sorry to be so philosophical, but it's true. And same with our day-to-day in our workforce. So anything you can do to do more with less and free up that time, because really that's what the technology is there to do, is to give you more time back if it's deployed right. And I think corporate America, as I say, is rife for this sort of employee revolution when it comes to productivity tools. And I think wearables have a huge area of opportunity beyond that which we've even deployed. You could think about replacing those security badges that everyone loses or find annoying. You could have it embedded in a wearable device, which could get you through the turnstiles every morning. That could unlock your computer. There's a million different ways that could be applied. And I think it makes employees safer at the end of the day.
What's next for HSBC as it relates to wearables? Are you guys already starting to kind of whiteboard and plan out where you want to take your wearable strategy?
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, Mo, we started our flagship branch, then we went to another branch in Manhattan. Our colleagues in Dubai, another country within HSBC world, to another region, have deployed the same Samsung solution at their digital customer service unit in Dubai. I've personally been there to see this. We went to Malaysia in Southeast Asia early this year to show 30 markets for HSBC, the solution. And then the plan over the next 12 months is to roll out the deployment across a whole range of branches in the US and continue to see the deployment. And we hope to see the same phenomenal results. But more importantly is the engagement of staff. So when we think about rolling these out at other branches in the US, for example, the biggest constraint is the number of branch managers that want this versus how many we can go to. Because whilst we saw really successful results at our, for example, the flagship, every branch we go to, we start again. Because you can't take anything for granted. You got to work with the frontline team, with the branch manager, with the staff, educating them through how it's going to help them, some tweaks that are relevant to that location or that branch. Work with that team to make sure it's successful, because you can't just lift and shift and drop a technology and then run away. It doesn't work that way. So we got to be nimble, we got to be flexible, but again, you got to work with your people.
Sure. So, and again, considering the fact that you guys designate them as customers, which I think is a very important distinction, you're making sure that you get the voice of the customer in every single branch before you do a rollout. You're not just lifting it up, dropping it in, and saying a one size fits all.
That's it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I definitely appreciate that.
Thank you.
We do have a few extra minutes, so if there's anyone that has any questions for Jeremy, feel free to ask them. We do ask if you guys can walk to the microphone there so that we can make sure that everyone in the rooms hear you. But yeah, feel free, sir, if you can go ahead and pose your question.
All right, I'm going to be a bit of a hog. I'm going to take 3 questions, if I could. First question was going to be around the proprietary technology that you taught. I know you can't really talk about it, but was it a HSBC specific technology, or was it a Samsung technology, and would that be something you'd be interested in licensing?
I think he's referring to the proprietary to security component there.
So essentially, it's a great question. So essentially, the technology is a Samsung technology on the device.
Sure.
One of the ways we wanted to, with the pilot, we wanted to ensure it was in with a kind of a confined risk management framework, was there wasn't connectivity to HSBC systems at all. We did that deliberately. So therefore, we relied on the Samsung configuration. That was really important. The proprietary security feature, however, that was like ideation, design thinking workshop with our team who said, hey, is there anything you can do with this device that's going to help us with security?
Right. And
then we put that to Samsung in some of our closed sessions, and they're like, hey, these are 2 or 3 things we can think about. And then we kind of got back to the 1 or 2 things we ended up deploying, which were really, I think, revolutionary in many ways. I will say that, thank God, we didn't have to test that in the field. We tested the feature in testing mode, but not in the field environment, at least not to this point, which is a good thing. Hopefully we'll never have to, but we know that if we do have to, we're in good hands.
Yeah, awesome, great. Other 2 questions. One was going to be just around, did you experience any pushback from, say, employees who had, like, Apple Watches and, like, I don't want to wear 2 watches and,
So we didn't get anything other than amazing adoption and success. For example, what was really interesting is in the first 2 weeks of deployment, if you think about the success of a technology, it's the barrier to entry has to be low enough that people adopt it. And then if people don't get the benefit from it, then they quickly lose trust in that. So in the first 2 weeks, one of the lessons we learned was everybody in the ecosystem has to be wearing the device. So if one person comes to work and they're running a bit late and they quickly put their coffee down and they quickly go and unlock their computer and quickly go and say hi to a colleague and they didn't put the device on straight away, very easily 2 hours later, if you're then sending a message to that colleague and they're not responsive, all of a sudden you can go, well, this doesn't work.
Okay.
And what we found was it was just because there was one colleague in particular who just behaviorally had been forgetting to do this because they'd never done this before in their 20-year career in banking.
Right.
So when we fed back, we got some of that data back, and we spoke to the team, we're like, here's a little behavioral nudge. You get in the morning, you put your watch on. Last thing you do at night is you put it on the little docking station to charge. First thing in the morning, put it on. Because if one person isn't doing it, then the whole team, you're letting the team down. And then we quickly saw that little behavioral nudge. We had some of our advisors actually quite enjoyed wearing their own traditional old school watch and then the smartwatch, for example. One of our advisors loved it so much that he happened to walk home with it every other day, although it didn't actually work because it was outside the ecosystem. So we saw, we didn't see anything other than excitement and a fantastic engagement. Again, one of the other interesting things, just to go on a slight tangent, if I may, is, a month later, we did a joint session around feedback. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think Gary from Samsung came to like an early morning branch huddle, 8 o'clock in the morning when the team meets before it opens. We're getting some real feedback. And one of the things we did that was really important was to have privacy in mind of our people. So that's why we did some features and not others. Number 1 feedback. First thing, of all the things that the team collectively wanted to talk about a month after deployment, hey, can you start tracking our steps so we can do a team health and wellness goal and have a leaderboard in the office in the cafeteria? Who's doing the most steps? Can we set a team goal? And we're like, wait, nice. Are you asking us to I don't want to say breach your privacy, but to open up your and now we never actually did that for other reasons, but the fact that that was their first thing, say, hey, can we give you access to our personal data to therefore have a better employee engagement aspect and team building was incredible. And there's a report out from Accenture right now around employee data, and 92% of employees in America right now are open to sharing their data if they see a benefit for them. And that's a clear example right there.
Yeah.
So it was really amazing feedback.
Yeah, awesome.
And then my last question was just going to be around, you're an innovator, and you're in an organization where your role is tasked as being an innovator. But I'm sure they come back, you have all different ideas, and your CFO comes back to you and says, hey, I don't know if we can afford that. For the early pilots that you've done, have you seen the ROI so that, sort of the CFOs, in your organization are going, hey, this is, wow, we need to go faster with this, or this is really valuable?
That's a great question. So my parents are from Africa. I'm born in Australia. I work for a British bank that has an Asian name. I live in America. If ever there was going to be an outsider, it's going to be me. And that's, I think, part of the success of innovation. We define it. One of the first things I did actually when I was brought in on the role, my CEO said, Jeremy, you're a stallion, go and run. That was my job description. You can't manage what you can't measure. The first thing we did was create a definition that everyone could buy into around what innovation is. And that is doing something differently that creates value. Whatever the paradigm is you're trying to solve for, but there has to be value created, whether that's shareholder value, employee value, stakeholder value, etc. And by the way, everyone in your organization can be doing something differently that creates value. Frontline staff, back office, reception desks, salespeople, everyone, C-suite, everybody. So therefore, everybody can be doing innovation. And that was one of the ways we wanted to bring thousands and thousands of people on this journey with us of innovation and successfully executing that. The other thing I would say is leading up to this deployment, we'd also made history by putting the world's first robot in a bank branch with tremendous success. We saw, in the first 14 months of deploying that robot, we saw a 41% increase in new account openings at our flagship branch where we put the robot in compared to the prior 14 months. We built a lending platform on a mobile device, a 3-minute application, a 60-second credit decision, funded within 24 hours. I could go on and on and on. The point is, by the time we got to the wearables, we'd had built up enough street cred with our people that it was not as crazy as the first one. I think some of my colleagues referred to me when I first joined HSBC as the crazy Aussie. I'm not really sure it was complimentary. I think when they refer to me as the crazy Aussie now, it's probably with a little bit of love. But I think innovation isn't easy. Execution is really hard. Ideas are free, talk is cheap, especially in corporate America. Executing that change is really, really hard. You have to have a culture that's strong enough to be open to challenging the status quo, the diversity of ideas, and having great people who are prepared to take a risk, a smart risk, an educated risk, when you think about the customer in mind, whether it's your employee or your external customer. And I think measuring that's why we always think about accountability with data and information to share the results of what we do, because we believe in being the change. We should be accountable. We should use data to make the case for the success of what we've done, or failure, for that matter.
So we have 1 minute left. We have a question here. I'm going to say something really quickly about this slide. We're just providing you some online resources. Our team that I'm a part of, we have a few hackathons for the developers in the room. One's happening in Seattle in November, another one in Austin in December. We do something called Jump Starts, where we can actually come on site and help to train your developers on how to build applications for wearables as well as Knox. So feel free to talk to us a little bit about that. If you don't mind, you can go ahead and ask your last question. If he isn't able to get to answering it, we might have to answer it on the side, but at least so everyone in the room can kind of hear the question. If you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I was just curious what the evolution was of the business metrics that you guys wanted to track. When you're an innovative pilot, it looks a lot different than when you're trying to execute across multiple locations. And has that metric set changed or evolved or sophisticated for your team or for the business as you've rolled it out?
Sure. Very quickly, it's a great question. Very quickly, the KPIs stay the same at each location. It's helped shape where we deploy and why, because I think there are certain circumstances where we think the deployment will be more effective than other locations, and that's helped shape some of the locations for deployment. But suffice it to say, you can't eat, you eat what you kill at the end of the day. When you measure the success of account openings, needs fulfilled, employee engagement scores at those particular locations, those metrics shouldn't change based on whether it's anything's a pilot, permanent deployment, or others. Those are objective metrics that we monitor all the time. And we're really proud of the impact that it's had, and we're grateful. And as I say, call to action, think about wearables, think about banking. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jeremy, for your time.